All right, everyone, we're going to start this discussion on the simulation with some of the answers to your questions that you put in the discussion board last week. So I am going to just take a peek at Spencer here and see where he's at from a decision-making process for round one. Oh, he's got his in already, which is good to know, and I will fix it as we go. So I am going to go into Spencer's and just go take a look at his round three. I think I'll just do that first. So round three was last round and where we were at. And I want to come up with a couple of things for you to understand. First of all, the reason why we're doing the simulation is because it simulates an actual business environment. So the decisions that you make in one area of a company impact the decisions in another area of the company. And that's really the flow of what I want you to see. How maybe raising your prices might impact how much you sell, or keeping your prices too low might impact how much you make, that kind of thing. So just that balance of and how your forecasting impacts your production, impacts your sales. All of those things impact one another, and it's a really important thing. Your logistics could be set up completely wrong or not effective, and maybe a whole section of your market never sees your product. So while it's a transportation related decision, it's impacting your sales and your overall profitability of your company. So all of these areas have impact. One of the things that I think students struggle with the most in this is the idea that they are going to perhaps have a right answer. There is no right answer. So it's trade-offs. You're making one trade-off for another, and I think that's one of the biggest difficulties that people have as they look through this is it's a trade-off, and where you gain in one area, you lose in another area. So it's not a win-win for everyone in most situations. So taking a look at that is really important. The other thing that I want you to realize is the amount of time you spend in here up front will greatly impact your results. So some people I looked at for the first three rounds have spent over 4 hours in the simulation. Other people have spent 20 minutes. Ironically, the people that spent 20 minutes are the ones that say that they're confused the most. So the more time you spend in here, the more you will understand it, the more you will get it, the better you will do. Okay? So rushing through it up front is not going to help you. Come round 5 and 6, you're not going to need to spend nearly as much time on this. Maybe 15-20 minutes to do this, right? Up front is where you need to spend the time. So if you haven't done so now, the next couple of weeks might be a little bit more time that you need to establish to make this effective for you. So keep that in mind. So what are you pulling from this market outlook? Every week you have a market outlook. It gives you information about your products. And the interesting thing about the market outlook is not only does it give you information about your demand forecast in the top, which is important, but it gives you some idea of perhaps the cost, the economic impact of certain regions where they may, in one case, purchase more product, or maybe they don't purchase as much product because of things that are happening. Oil production, as an example, impacts your transportation in a great deal and may add some additional cost. Taxes will cost you more information as well, which is why the tax tab is on here. We're not using it real much, but that the taxes may impact where you sell your products and where you keep your money. You may be doing better off if you keep your money in one country over another because the tax rate is lower. So that also drives business decisions as well. So there's a lot of things that happen in here that's important to think about. It impacts your production, it impacts your logistics, it impacts your marketing, it also might impact your research and design. Each week is a little bit different, so it's definitely worth taking a few notes on this page before you move forward. That being said, going to the demand tab, which I'll go to now, and Spencer, any changes that I make, I will, actually I can't make it on this round anyway. So changes that would be made in here would definitely update later. So taking a look at this, I want you to see first in this bottom section, when you this is where you have to make sure you have your two technologies if you're selling two technologies noted. So if you research and design a technology and find you can't produce it, this is the tab that you have to come back to and make sure it's set. You also have to make sure that you have demand forecasted in each one in order to produce it, to sell it, to get a unit cost, all of those things. So it's important. The other thing to remember is this is the market share from all of your teammates in your universe that you're working in, okay? So if you say that you're going to have 38% market share, that means the rest of the class is only going to have 60% overall market share. That's not a lot to spread through 4 other teams. So generally, if you started off with an 8% market share, you wouldn't jump to a 38% market share. That type of growth is probably difficult to do. So you would probably jump up to make sure, let's say this was overall 8%, maybe next round if you made some positive changes that you think will impact your market, maybe it's 12% between the two, okay? 38% is going to overinflate your production numbers, cause you to perhaps build too many plants, and throw off a whole number of other things. So likewise in Asia, as an example, you had 6%. Now you're saying you're having 42%. So that's like a huge jump. That's not really possible in the normal world. So you'd want to jump a little bit slower, maybe 10%, 8, 9, 10% between the two. If your prices were really off, let's say, and you made a really big adjustment in that, so you're thinking you're going to sell more, maybe make it 12%. You know, you got to play with it a little bit. Nothing is perfect, but you're not making large 40% jumps from one week to the next. That's probably not going to happen unless your competition does something drastically wrong. So that would be the first thing that I would update on this page looking at it, okay? As far as the demand forecasts go up top, this is saying that overall in the market, the whole market as a whole is going to go 2%, a minus 6%, and a minus 10%. So if I take a look at what the market conditions said, it said the growth in the U.S. is estimated to be slightly positive, so that 2% works. Asia is between 5 and 8%, and negative in Europe, where it's affected most by the flow. So I would probably have, 2-3% is good here. This should be a positive number. This should be like 8%, and this should maybe just be a 0 because it's not growing very much, if not maybe a negative impact. So I wouldn't have this a growth area. But I don't know that I would deduct 10% because I don't know that for that to be true. And this should probably be 5 to 8%. So 2% for US looks good here. Going onto the production page, you want to make sure that your production between the two plants equals 100%. You can't go over. You can go under. I'm not sure why you'd want to. If you did not have 100% utilization or 95% and up utilization, you probably don't want to use contract manufacturing, especially if you're able to manufacture in Asia. Now let's say your overall Asia demand on this page looked to be, let's see, even with the numbers that we have here, we're showing 8%. Or 8,000 units, 9,000 units, okay? But this is a gross overestimation of what it should be. It really should be more like 6%. So I'm going to look to see, like if you had 10% of a market in Europe, it's like 1,000. So maybe overall here, it would be like, it's going to be a little bit more in Asia. So maybe 3,000, 4,000. I don't think that you need, in this case, for practice round 3, more than your 4,950. I think you're set just fine. So I would make these all 0. That would have been my recommendation in here. And once you adjusted your production on the back side, you would find that you had plenty of production. Okay, so that's something to remember. This also shows you your unit cost. So in the US, it costs you $71 to make Tech 1. In the US, it costs you $101 to outsource it, and $110 in Asia to outsource it. So it's a little bit more expensive to outsource and use contract manufacturing decisions in this case. However, for Tech 2, because it's relatively new for you, it's $101 versus $182. It's actually cheaper in the US to actually outsource your Tech 2, so you can use that to drive your decisions as a way to think about it. But in Asia, it is definitely cheaper, $62 per unit. Versus 118, so you wouldn't want to do that. So that's just my thoughts on that. So a couple ways to look at that for sure. Then looking at the investment page, this is where you can invest in plants. So in this case, we currently have 19 plants in the US and 9 plants in Asia, 23 and 15. That's a lot of plants. I can't imagine you need any more than that. So if you start planning your demand estimates, like this should have been 2,000, maybe 3,500, maybe 2,000, and then adjust accordingly. These are really high. So once you adjust this accordingly, you'll find out that you don't need quite so many. It costs a lot of money to build plants, so you want to manage your costs that way. So the capacity of a plant is 550 units, and you've got here 3,588. And in this case, you had the capacity to do 6,000 that last round, and this did not come to fruition in this round, I am sure. So you're over what you need to be on this. So that's how I would take a look at this. You have to, you're not going to get 12,000 because you put it in here. You have to make the right decisions to get that. And when we go to the research and design, there's a few things in marketing that we can do differently to help increase that. So in the research and design, whatever number is in here is what you need to manufacture it. But you can also say, I'm going to purchase one new feature. It won't tell me how much it costs, but you can see the cost difference. Sometimes it's cheaper just to purchase. You get it the round that you're purchasing it in, and that makes for a better decision. But if it's cheaper to in-house develop it and you wait around, then that's a decision that you can make there. But let's say I wanted to in-house develop one, it would cost me $46,663. Purchasing 2 features is $110. So it might be cheaper to add your features in-house than to outsource it. I don't know. You have to check. Each round is going to be a little different. So from a promotion, anytime you add new features, I would probably up your promotion a little bit. I like to stay somewhere between 10 and 15,000. In here, it's always US dollars, but I like to keep that kind of consistent, especially if I'm working on improving my products each round. Okay. This is your unit cost. This is how much it costs you to manufacture your product. Okay, so it's $108 and Spencer's got $700 for a selling price. That is going to be too high compared to his competition. So you need to bring this price down so that you make it. You're not going to gross margin 1.5 on a $700 phone that's worth $108. Just not going to happen. Same with Tech 2. You're going to want to work on that price to make sure that it matches. Now, if you remember back to business principles, we talk about the equilibrium, right? So based on your capacity and your demand, what is the best price? And that's kind of what you have to figure out, is what's going to be that sweet spot best price for you. If you don't have a lot of capacity, which in this case you're not short of, but if let's say you didn't have a lot of capacity and you were really woefully close to running out each round, then maybe bump your price up a little bit. In his case, in Spencer's case, he should be selling it for $112 because he has so much capacity he can't sell enough. So he's kind of got the Walmart model going on here with the practice round. It was practice, so but it'll give you kind of an idea of where you're at. Same for each of the other rounds, the same thing applies. In this case, it's Tech 3. And this price is a little bit more comparable to what it should be. And you can see that your ratios for your pricing is way off from the US to Asia. Likewise, too high in Europe, $116 to $500. So definitely too high. I said there wasn't a right decision, but that's a pretty high decision. Look at what your competition is in the results tab and see where you should be at. From a logistics perspective, I like to, as Spencer did, do US, Europe, Asia, Asia, Europe, US, and that works out really well. I'm just going to go ahead and skip the tax page for this video. And then in here, if you want to pay off some long-term debt, you can certainly do that. That is not necessarily a requirement, especially with how low your cash is, because you do not want to take an emergency loan. So he did move some money over to the US so that he could do that. If you're short on cash, you may want to issue some stocks. So you can definitely issue some shares. And I don't, if I did like, let's say 1,000. It's not gonna let me. So it'll stop you if it's too much, but you could put 1,000 in there. It'll put money in here for you, and then and your current buyback price is $33. So it's not right now not a very good investment to do that because you're not going to get a whole lot of return on that. But and then once you have your decisions made, they will be in blue and on the right hand side, and you just hit copy, and then the copy will put it over into your team page. Okay, and that is what you have to do to complete your rounds. I hope that helps answer some of the questions. Please filter more questions to me. I'd love to help you out with anything else that you are confused about.